And we are live. Welcome to our episode of Business Focus Live with me, John, where we talk about business related topics as well as news from here and around the world. If new to this channel, don't forget to subscribe and let's get started. Cue in the intro. And we're back. Today is June 12th, Friday. Happy Independence Day to everyone. So, to start off with our topic today, so many businesses have been tremendously affected by the pandemic that is occurring globally, not just here in our country. And many industries have been significantly affected with the likes of the airline industry as well as the tourism industry. And today's topic will be focusing on the retail industry. So, what's it like now with the retail industries? Now, some businesses or some retail businesses have been doing well, while others are struggling or are in the process of going bankrupt or have gone bankrupt already. So, what's the outlook or the future of the retail business going to look like? So, let's take a look here. Oops, sorry. There you go. Wrong slide. Okay. So, according to businessinsiders.com, the future of retailers will be focusing even more so on the in-store experience. So what do I mean? So according to statistics in the United States, U.S. store closure are at all-time high, wherein 88% of their total sales are still based on brick-and-mortar stores, and they are still the dominant driver of retail spending in the country. But in-store sales or earnings aren't growing fast enough to keep the doors open. So question is, how do they find ways or to increase or boost their revenue? Which goes back to the main question: why some businesses have thrived while others have failed. So businesses or retailers have to rethink their approach in terms of how to deal with their customers, especially the in-store experience, so to speak, right? So what they're saying is that they should bet on technology, not just using internet as a medium, but also using other forms of technology to accomplish their goals. So typically, an in-store experience is typically when you go to a store, they have cameras tracking you, your movements, what your preference are, how long you spend on a particular store, on a particular item, and so forth. And they keep track of that so that they can make analysis and make a better decision making. But with other forms of technology such as applications, let me see here. Yeah, using apps or facial recognition, better technology to better keep track of shoppers' behavior and make an informed purchase and so forth. So, is technology really that important? Actually, they surveyed, what's this? 5,000 global shoppers versus 1,000 global stores, and they asked if employees armed with devices are better equipped to answer customers' queries or questions. And 51% of shoppers feel they are better connected than in-store associates or salespeople, which is somewhat in between. So neither good, neither bad. And then 56% of associates agree consumers are better connected, which is somewhat, again, somewhere in between. But in this result, 74% state that of associates say the tech-equipped associates would improve customer service. I think that's a reasonable assumption. But how do they go about, as I mentioned? So not just using cameras to keep track of customers, but as well as keep track of your behavior, maybe using, not maybe, but using apps or applications that customers buy. similar to how Facebook keeps track of your preferences and how they can advertise different products and so forth. Similar to how YouTube does their algorithms. And the key point here is to create a virtuous cycle. So it's a four-stage process wherein the purpose is to generate insight that improves the next visit. So the first stage is the consumer begins shopping. Then the second stage is on the location, your actions are being tracked. Okay? And then the third stage is the data collected are then analyzed in terms of your behavior and preferences. So that in the fourth stage, they use that information to create specific advertisements and product selection that is preferred, that you prefer. So in my case, for example, let's say several months ago, I bought a pair of pants. Then the next time I visit, they would ask me, would you buy another pair of pants or maybe partner with a shirt or maybe a jacket or whatever accessories that they have. So they're better equipped to help customers make an informed purchase, which is reasonable because what in essence is happening is they're tailor fitting or customizing the experience of individuals, not just as a broad spectrum. And what's the purpose of it? Because if businesses don't adapt or innovate right now, which some are seeing the repercussions of not doing anything, are having difficulties or to the extreme are being weed out. And here we have an article on Reuters that Macy's says return to normal business could take up at least a year away, which is reasonable for their case that they're somewhat lucky in a sense because other contemporaries in their retailing industries are already filing for bankruptcy. So with the exceptions maybe of Walmart, Costco, and even Lowe's are doing well right now. But for the rest, like companies like J. Crew, JCPenney, and even Neiman Marcus have already filed for bankruptcy. So many are trying to find ways to avoid or stay out of bankruptcy, but whether they're bought off or made additional investments, we have to wait and see. And if we take a look here, in the case of JCPenney, there may be some lifeline for the company. Equity firm, Sycamore Partners, is in initial talks or the initial talks to buy the company. Now, JCPenney is a very big company in terms of how many employees they employ. They have roughly about 85,000 people, and they're spread across 800 stores in the United States. Now, the pandemic that has occurred worldwide has brought about, how strong is your business as of current. Now, demand for in-store sales have been dwindling over the years. So companies who have neglected this position have been tremendously affected. So you can see here how it turned out for them. So Sycamore is weighing whether to acquire the company or make additional investment. Now, there's no certainty that a deal would be made, so we have to wait and see what happens here. Now, take note, JCPenney as of right now has permanently closed roughly about 150 stores, and they plan to shut more. So right now they have reopened nearly 500 stores that were closed due to the pandemic, so they plan to open more stores later. Now, obviously, their concern is customers might be slow to return amid the health concerns and job losses. So again, this is an opportunity for many businesses to come up with ways of how to encourage other consumers or shoppers to buy their products. So another company that is seeking or is in the process of filing their bankruptcy is the Brooks Brothers company. So they're now in talks with banks to raise financing for their potential bankruptcy, which is set to happen by next month. So they've already what is this? They're already in the process or the sale process. It launched earlier to heavy interest. So they're in talks for bankruptcy financing that show that filing for court's protection is an option that they are preparing for. Now, many buyers are interested to buy the company, but they're still deciding whether to wait it out after the bankruptcy so that they can buy fewer stores, which is more reasonable and more practical. Going back to Macy's, even though they're still doing business, they've already reported nearly a loss of 1 billion of sales, operating losses in the first quarter alone. And according to the CFO, Felicia Williams, she is quoted saying that we do not see a return of normalized return until well into 2021, possibly not until 2022. I think that's for most industries. It's going to take some time. And he mentions that companies has to become smaller as a concept, meaning become leaner so that you know you shed away those unwanted fats and focus on what your core competency is. So go back to basics in a matter of sense. So it's not just a matter of cutting costs, but going back to what you're strong at, especially for retailers. Who are your key demographics, key customers, and you go back to your roots, so that I think many businesses have become complacent in terms of growth, in terms of sales and revenues in the past few years, but we took it for granted and forgot that what happened in the last financial crisis way back in 2008, that nothing in life is certain and crises will occur more often than not. And with the pandemic, it's going to be the new norm, and it's not going to be our last encounter with the pandemic. So businesses have to be aware and prepared for what the future lies. So for the company, they're offering heavy discounts now to clear its spring apparel stock. Now, continuing. Speaking of streaming, for those who are into gaming, uh, cloud streaming could kill the games, console games. So if you're into gaming, so I'm sure many of you are playing with your Sony PlayStation or even Microsoft Xbox or Nintendo Switch. Now, how can cloud gaming kill the consoles? Now, one major advantage of cloud gaming is offering its flexibility to customers or gamers. So typically, console games, you need a box to play with. Typically, you play it at home. You cannot bring it outside. You can bring it, but it would be a difficult endeavor of bringing it outside. So cloud gaming gives you that opportunity, that option. So companies like Google Stadia, Microsoft Project X Cloud, and NVIDIA GeForce Now offer such services. Now, that may sound too good, but I think right now it's still not yet popular with gaming majority. Why? Downside of cloud gaming is it's reliant on internet access. So if you do not have a constant stream or stable connection, whether it's fiber or whatever internet connection that you have, then you will have intermittent lags or disruptions within your gaming experience, which is what you don't want. Because as of right now, for gaming consoles, you buy the CD, or whether it's digital or the actual copy, you play it as it is, and then you can enjoy it to your heart's content. And another thing with cloud gaming services is they provide a subscription fee, which would entail additional cost. So rather than pay it one time, you have to continuously pay for it for typically like how Netflix does or Amazon Prime does their services. And the third thing here that's concerned right now is why gamers are still apprehensive using cloud gaming is the content, meaning the AAA titles that you can play in those services. Now, obviously, many publishers are still hesitant shifting their resources to making games for cloud gaming. But maybe in the future where 5G is more prominent and has been adapted to the market, so better stable internet connection for everyone, that may become more appealing for many gamers. And as I see it in the future, cloud gaming may not necessarily compete with console games, but maybe as a supplement. So I'll give gamers an option whether to they buy console games and then use cloud gaming whether they're outside, maybe at work, in vacation, and so forth. Give them some flexibility of playing wherever they are, which is I think that's a good idea. I mean, right now I do play PlayStation games, Sony PlayStation games. Yeah, I play Nintendo Switch. Typically, I play them at home. So if I do go outside, I bring my laptop. I could play cloud gaming, which is a good idea. And you don't need a very powerful spec to be able to play online games. Finally, speaking of local news, here we have an article according to Rappler that according to the NEDA or the National Economic Development Authority, stating that the economic stimulus package that's being proposed that is worth 1.3 trillion, that's trillion with a T, pesos to combat the coronavirus pandemic is not fundable. So why is that so? Oh, wait, what happened here? There you go. That it's not fundable. And this was according to the Socioeconomic Planning Secretary, Mr. Carl Chua, wherein he stated and explained to legislators that are proposing would require new revenue sources, which are very limited at best, and the government can only afford 130 billion versus the 1.3 trillion that they are proposing. It's not fundable. And the Constitution states that for special appropriations or funds have to be actually available. So where are we going to get the additional funds that they're proposing? It's easy enough to say, I want this so-and-so amount, but if there's no revenue source to get from, then it's not realistic. And what's interesting here, according to some lawmakers, they view loans as a new revenue source. I think they need to go back to their accounting days and ask an accountant that what a loan or debt is compared to revenue. They're not synonymous to one another. If you borrow money, you have to pay interest at that. So that's not a revenue source. You're owing someone or an institution money rather than generate based on taxpayers or business paying their taxes. And according to Mr. Chua, he is quoted saying that we are in discussion with the congressman because such an amount would not be fundable, because any supplemental budget or standby appropriation would require new revenue sources, and that is very limited, and financing or borrowing is not a revenue source. It's very clear. If you know the accounting, what's your balance sheet and your income statement, you already understand that those are two different things, and you cannot say that they're one and the same. And he's proposing that maximizing, I think that's a key word that he uses, to maximize what they are provided. But the question that begs to be asked is, where did the funds from the initial budget for the coronavirus went to? Now take note, they've already released the amount of, how much is it? Worth in the north of 353 or 54 billion pesos. So where did those funds go to? Did it go to the individuals, the frontliners, to individual taxpayers, to businesses that really need it? So if those funds were actually appropriated to those who are in need, then we won't need as much additional fund to combat the pandemic. Continuing, and in a strongly worded message from the 2nd District of Albay, Representative Mr. Joey Salceda questioned Mr. Chua's remarks, stating that, tell that to the 8 million families whose jobs were destroyed. Now, if you understood what Mr. Chua was saying, that if you don't have the money to spend, so you cannot blame the person or that individual, that, how are you going to pinpoint, blame someone for not being able to provide? Maybe, if everyone were to do their job and be responsible, and appropriate the amount, the fund that was meant to help support taxpayers as well as businesses, we won't be in this place right now. And what's interesting, he also pointed out that he's posting that our country's debt to gross GDP or gross domestic product ratio is an all-time low. Now, if you consider 41.5% is low, I don't know what is considered high in his opinion. And right now, our debt is already at almost 9 trillion pesos. Now, what Mr. Chua is proposing, instead of adding more funds or generating more funds, is to maximize what we have, maximize the impact in terms of using policy tools introduced by economic team and the central bank. So what he means is the fund that was proposed could be worth in the north of 847 billion worth of fiscal, monetary, and regulatory measures, which seems reasonable. But what he's recommending is instead of directly giving cash to households, individuals, and building infrastructures to help businesses and individuals, that's not the way that he's stating. Rather, he would prefer to course it through financial institution and state-owned banks. Now, I have no problem with state-owned banks so that businesses can, use it as a means to help their businesses stay afloat, pay their salaries, and help businesses stay afloat. But for financial institutions, like let's say a private institution bank, their goals is totally different from a government institution. Private firms or institutions, their main goal is to maximize their profit and generate revenue. So it makes it harder for individuals or even businesses to tap into those resources. Unless government do their part, which is the role of any government, is to help taxpayers' welfare as well as businesses to help them stay afloat. Now, it makes sense that if you don't give the money directly as a subsidy or loan, use that to leverage them by using the bank. Okay, I understand that. But again, the goal or objective of a private institution or banks here is totally different from a government institution, where it's to help citizens as well as businesses. But we have to wait and see what will happen in the near future in terms of how government will actually implement the many instances that is occurring. Okay. Oops. For a while. Okay, we got cut off. Let's take a look here. Okay, there you go. We're back. Let's take a look here at some chat. Hello there, Huge. How's work from home doing? Going, sorry. Talk. You don't think cloud game is going to be viable in our country for more or less 5 years? We gotta fix our internet connections, not only for internet service providers but also mobile network connectivity. Yes, I think that's correct. It's going to take some time, but the future, as I mentioned in my last live stream, 5G is coming sooner rather than later. Whether whoever is providing, whether it's Huawei, Globe, or Smart Telecoms, the future will be coming sooner rather than later. And with better infrastructure, better technology, cloud gaming will be a viable option now. How viable? We have to wait and see. But there's an opportunity there. You can just imagine if 5G is implemented properly, gaming would be available for everyone, not just for individuals in the upper class, but in every part or everywhere in the Philippines, right? But you can always be optimistic. Worst case scenario, you can still always go back to playing console games, right? Anyway, so that concludes our discussion for today's live stream. So if you have any question, feel free to leave your comments down below and I'll get back to you. Also, don't forget to hit the notification bell icon so you can stay updated with the latest videos as well as news. As always, thanks for watching. I'll see you again next week. Same time, same channel. Take care. Where's the... How do we end it? There you go. End stream. Yes.